Hi all. There's an interesting match going on at the moment between Britain's number one, Nigel Short, who's rated 2706, against Efimenko, who I believe is a Ukrainian GM. And according to ChessBase, I think it's Universal Event Promotions organising this match. I think it's a 6-game match. This is game 2. Nigel Short struck back after being defeated in round 1, game 1. So he was playing black. So this was yesterday, the 21st, and it was Ruy Lopez. And they tread on ground which actually occurred in the Korchnoi Karpov matches in the early 70s. So it was before one of them was born, before Efimenko was born. I think Nigel Short was just a kid at the time of those Karpov-Korchnoi matches. So this is that sort of territory. Bishop e6, defending d5. So this is all theory. But this is an old move, and apparently I think Korchnoi got done over when he used it against Karpov. So g6, slightly controversial, weakening the dark squares. On the other hand, e5 is going to be a target. So bishop c2, bishop g7. So white protects e5. And so what's black's plan? If black hasn't got an easy break with f6, what is the point of this bishop? Is white just going to overprotect e5? Well, as we'll see, actually Nigel does have a good spin on this. After bishop g5 he plays queen c8, which looks a bit awkward, but there's nothing tactically to worry about at the moment. Knight e7 is delayed though because of that pesky bishop, but the bishop actually goes back to f4. So Nigel actually seizes the opportunity for knight e7 because he wants to get in actually c5, and the queen's behind that pawn, so the queen can actually then go to c6. So this is not a bad turn of events if bishop f4 was really needed. Queen d2, now c5. So black's getting a bit of space now and potential counterplay. So bishop h6. It's logical because black did weaken these dark squares, so white just wants to weaken them further. On the other hand, if it's not exploitable, if f6 or h6 is not going to be exploitable, maybe it's not a big deal at the moment. But the queen comes in as though this is going to be a dangerous attack. But Nigel Short doesn't panic; he just plays rook fe8. Now, if this bishop's left, it will go back to h8, so there'll be no bishop g7. So white takes on g7 and now plays h4. It does look a bit crude. What is white really going to hack Nigel Short up here? Well, Nigel Short actually counters back on the queen side. He doesn't play like h5 or anything like that. That would really, perhaps be weakening the position even more. He just plays a5 and lets white throw, the h pawn if he really wants to. But I don't think that's a big deal here. Black could just carry on with the queen side attack. So white tries to delay black's queen side attack, and it's sort of breaking a sort of principle because black does have the advantage on that side of the board, and I guess the idea of this temporary pawn set is to fracture black's pawns, especially a5, to leave that isolated. If white can regain that a pawn if black did take. Black he first kicks the queen and then he just plays rook to b8, rook ev8. So the pressure is mounting on the queen side, and white at the moment still hasn't got anything really visible or exploitable on these dark squares. And Nigel Short, instead of taking on a4, which is not that great, it'll be just temporary pressure. He plays actually b4, probably more permanent. After c4, he does sneak in a positional pawn sacrifice. So he plays b3, and he gets great piece activation now after rook b4, and an immediate tactical pin on the pawn. So for his pawn, what has he got? Well, we're going to see that black's conversation really builds up now. He gets the light squared bishop now, because black, if the knight is left there, say queen g3, then actually there's rook g4. This is starting to be really quite dangerous, according to Ruy with rook g4. So basically, if white's forced to give up the bishop, black's okay now already, for the pawn sack, I believe. So knight f8, nice blockade move, Nimzovichian style on e6, and the knight can maybe come to f4, threaten knight d4 in some variations, especially if there's going to be an exchange sack on f3 at some point. So this knight e6 is getting another piece in the centre. So the pressure is really mounting on white's position. And it also means that the queen's free now to go to b7 because it's protecting c5 as well. So rook c3 now, rook d8. So more centralisation from black. And after bishop takes f3, you know, Nigel's basically cashing in with this move. He's getting his pawn back, I believe, because if g takes, there's like rook h4, or it's an ugly move to play anyway, or rook takes d3 and knight f4. So basically, if white's going to take, then taking and taking on b3. So black's getting the pawn back with an advantage now, big advantage actually, as far as we're concerned. It's nearly a pawn's worth of positional advantage. So queen d1, and probably rook takes f3's unsound, completely unsound here. So you know, black could just build up the pressure quite easily, and he does that with rook b4. Maybe queen b4 is also worth considering, with the idea of queen g4, knight f4. That's Rybka's suggestion here. So rook b4 was played anyway. That's good as well. Now g5. So look at this knight in the centre. It's absolutely lovely. And black's also, you know, potentially threatening g4 and knight d4, or g4 maybe g3. Just all sorts of things. In fact, queen c6 and rook a4. There's play on both sides of the board, and white's pieces are very just, you know, passive and just staring like innocent spectators here. So black's building up pressure on the a pawn. So white's just tied to protecting the a pawn. Now rook g4, so the attack swings now with the immediate threat of queen takes f3, and after queen f5, now rook f4, because white, you know, wants to defend f3. It looks awkward, but if you're in a passive position, you know, sometimes it's difficult. But here, in actually the chess-based report, and also Rybka, you know, reckons like rook takes f3 is the right time for a positional sack here. There's enough compensation. Let's have a quick look. If this had occurred, knight d4, and white's getting even more advantage than he would just by playing, you know, normal positional moves. So, for example, knight e1, queen h1, queen e4. Right, so say here there's knight f3, and that's a big advantage for black because another pawn's dropping off, and there's still loads of threats. For example, let's just play any move for white. Knight takes e5, and you know, say rook takes c5. There's queen h1 and queen f3 and knight d3. So if the c5 pawn's immune, you know, the pawns are just dropping off basically. But anyway, Nigel, he doesn't play that positional sack. He just carries on trying to increase the pressure a bit with rook g4. So we get a potential repetition though, but now it's avoided with king g8. After queen d1, now rook b4. So Nigel's kind of sitting on the position, sitting on the pressure. So instead of cashing in there, he's just waiting a little bit more. So he's coming in with the queen now. In fact, this is a clear non-controversial advantage without the need for precise calculation. According to Rybka, all of a sudden the advantage has shifted. So what is the concrete threats here, you may wonder? Well, in the game knight d2 was played, giving up e5. But white, I suppose, in a sort of zugzwang, say rook c1, then maybe g4 and knight g5 to h3. So say the knight moves, knight either to g5 or knight d4. In fact, knight g5, there might be a problem because of queen d8. So this is a much safer way of doing it actually. That would blow your mind. Knight d4. And now there's some big problems like knight e2 check is threatened. So say queen d2, then e5 is dropping off. So just coming in with the queen has offered black an immediate advantage. So that's quite instructive. There was no need for that positional sack. You would need to like really calculate that properly. If black's got a big advantage here, then that's fine. Just plain sailing. So dropping the h5 pawn now. Rook d4, and now there's still loads of pressure and still loads of threats. Now there's a threat of knight f3, getting a dangerous pawn on f3, but also actually rook takes d2 first, then knight f3, winning the queen. So rook d2 is also something to be considered. So now, in this position, rook takes d2 was played here actually, just winning a piece. So rook takes, knight takes would be winning the rook. Also, is it just mating actually with queen h1? Maybe it's just all winning the queen actually, because queen e1, that's actually stronger. Because if taking the rook, actually there's no problem probably with taking the rook either, so that's fine. So it's quite a crushing game there from Nigel to come back in the second game. Let's have a quick overview and summary. So Ruy Lopez, and this is an old variation from the 70s, Karpov Korchnoi matches. So Nigel Short's basically revived an old forgotten system, just fianchettoing the dark squared bishop. And White, maybe with unfamiliarity, he improvised simply by this kind of crude, plan of just trying to swap that bishop off. But the black queenside counterplay seems quite strong here, without trying to fracture the pawns, just keeping them stable pawn structure, not trying to be materialistic, and actually trying to be dynamic here. We look at White's pawns here later on. They get weaker and weaker if we look at this in a summary view. After b3 drops, especially that base of that small pawn chain island, White was in serious trouble structurally here. I hope you enjoyed that. Please leave me comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks very much.